Hi, lovely. It's me, Rogue, your favorite obsessed drag queen. So, the idea for today's video came from a channel called Spooky Astronauts. It's run by this lovely girl called Emma. And she does like these monthly recap videos of everything she's watched. And she kind of lists them and rates them on Letterbox'd. I just started really getting into Letterboxd. I've been spending a lot of time on it recently. So, I figured this would be a fun video to do. So, you can see kind of if I would toot or boot certain movies that I've watched, kind of what I've rated them. I haven't reviewed all of them, but I've given all of them a rating. They're separate on Letterboxd, so you can give something a star rating, but you don't have to write a review. So, yeah, let's just jump into it and see how it goes. Okay, so the first movie I watched isn't a horror movie, but it's kind of horror. Is it horror adjacent? I don't know if it is. I've seen a lot of kind of horror media covering it as if it was a horror movie. The Boulets covered it. I know Spooky Astronauts herself watched it. I feel like I've seen it in maybe Mick Garris, the Postmortem podcast. I feel like they had Adam Wingard, the director, on. But the first movie I watched this month, literally on April 1st, was Godzilla vs. Kong. As a movie, it's good if you're into like the big spectacle of two kaiju fighting, which I am. I'm kind of butch, in case you haven't been able to tell. I'm really into big monsters just beating the crap out of each other. But I just have a problem with these movies. Like, Godzilla vs. Kong was entertaining for me, but the problem with all these recent kind of MonsterVerse movies, like since King of the Monsters and everything came out, is just I hate the human stories. I think this is a pretty common complaint. I just wish they would get rid of them. That kind of just really breaks the pace of the movie for me. I kind of understand why it needs to be there, but I would just rather it not be there. I would rather have a half an hour segment of Kong and Godzilla fighting than deal with all the human drama that's going on. So I rated it 3 out of 5. It's a fair rating, I think. Like, again, the spectacle of this movie is amazing. Kong and Godzilla both look amazing. There are actually some genuine emotional moments with Kong as well, because the film kind of paints him as the protagonist. So yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think 3 out of 5 is fair. So if you're into big spectacle of monsters beating the crap out of each other, be sure to watch that one. So the second movie that I watched this month was Fright Night. I'm looking at it here and seeing that I rated it 3 stars, which is weird because as the month has gone on and since I've had more time to like mull it over in my head, I feel like I should give it a 3.5. I don't have like a strict criteria or anything. I just kind of gauge it on how much I enjoyed watching it. So Fright Night is an 80s horror movie directed by Tom Holland. It follows the story of a dude, Charlie, a kid. He lives next door to a couple of people who've just moved into the house. 2 dudes, they seem a bit sus, to say the least. There's some shenanigans at play, and he eventually discovers that the dude living there is actually a vampire, and he discovers their vampiric antics. So a lot of hijinks ensue. Charlie tries to stop this dude from kind of corrupting his friends and those around him. And I'm new to this. I'm trying not to spoil anything. It's super 80s. The vampire stuff is awesome. I do love a good vampire movie. And yeah, I think I rated it 3. I'm probably going to bump that up to a 3.5. So if you do follow me on Letterboxd after this and you see it's bumped up to a 3.5, that's why. I'm going to give this movie a toot. So next up we have The Slumber Party Massacre, which is a movie I have a lot to say about. So much so that I'm actually working on a video right now. I actually already tried to record that video. It didn't go too well. I'll probably insert a clip here. I'm drinking red wine because I'm depressed that my new pajamas that I had organized for this video never showed up. Yeah, I was very sad about it, but I'm probably going to re-record that now in the following week. So maybe it'll be the next video after this one. But I do really enjoy this movie. I can see here, what did I rate it? I gave it 3 stars again. I reviewed this movie. Wait, did I actually rate it though? I must have. I gave it 3.5. Yes, okay, that makes sense. So I gave this movie 3.5 stars. There's a lot to say about it. I'm going to touch on some of the points I'm going to talk more in depth about in my video. But this movie is portrayed as a slasher movie. It's really more of a satirical slasher than anything. It kind of takes the piss out of the slasher subgenre in a way. It's a feminist movie as well. The story of how this movie came to be produced and then the actual story of the movie is, I don't want to say hardcore feminism, but it's such a feminist movie. It's a masterpiece. It has really strong queer and counterculture tones, which I love. So I have a lot to say about it. I will talk about it in my video. If you like slashers, watch it. And then if you're not offended at the idea of someone taking the piss out of slasher movies, also watch it. Okay, so next we have a movie that I really, really enjoyed. It's called Death Becomes Her, and it's an early 90s horror comedy starring Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep, and Goldie Hawn. This was a movie recommended to me by my partner. She told me that the diva side of me would absolutely love this, and she was right. Everything about this movie, well, not everything, there are a few problems I have with it, but I mean, the comedy is top notch. I went into this movie not expecting much. I kind of expected it to just be like. So, the premise of this movie is Meryl Streep plays an actress who's kind of obsessed with maintaining her youth, and she'll go to any means necessary to maintain that youth. I. I don't want to say anything to this because I went into this movie blind and I'm so glad I did. So I'm just going to say go in to this knowing nothing and you're going to be taking on a ride. It's so, so good. So yeah, I gave this 3.5. I feel like I might bump that up to a 4, honestly. I think the main reason I didn't give it a higher score was because some of the effects are really terribly dated. A very small amount of the jokes don't land. But overall, this movie is fantastic. I really recommend it. Next up, I watched Slacks, which is a 2020 horror movie about a pair of killer genes. And I love stupid horror movies. I love stupid movies that have the potential to be so bad that they're good. And when I saw a movie about killer genes, I thought that's what I was in for. But no, it's boring, which is the worst thing a movie can be. Like, I didn't expect much from it. I expected maybe some fun kills, maybe wacky characters or something like that. A movie that didn't take itself too seriously. But I feel toward the end, it started to take itself a little bit too seriously and then it just got boring. I feel like the kills could have been a lot more creative. The SFX could have been a lot better. I had not high hopes for it. I had hopes for this movie and then it was just a bit of a wet fart. So no, not recommending this one. Don't bother. So the next movie I watched is a very beloved movie directed by Stuart Gordon from 1985, and it's Reanimator. So Reanimator is a movie that came highly recommended from my friends. It was one of those movies that I feel like everyone has gaps in their movie knowledge. Like there's always those few movies that you're like, I've never seen that. And your friends are all like, what? What is wrong with you? Why haven't you seen it? That was this movie for me. So a few weeks ago, I eventually decided to sit down and watch it. And I'm so glad I did. I really like this movie a lot. It builds a really cool, creepy atmosphere. I think all the characters are fleshed out really well. The effects in this movie are amazing and hysterical. I'm thinking, okay, so minor spoiler, there's like a scene with a cat very early on. And I think that's like our first taste of like the weird SFX that we see in the movie. Or rather one of the earlier instances of SFX. Just the way this cat was set up, I did not have high hopes for the rest of the movie, but I was pleasantly surprised. I should have known because this is obviously a cult classic. So it gets wacky, it gets weird. They steer into how weird it is. I feel with kind of Lovecraft material, it can either take itself too seriously or just completely take the piss. And I thought this movie did a good job of taking the piss and just steering into the weird and wonderful. Highly recommend. Toot, absolutely. The next movie, I only watched this a few days ago. This is Summer of '84, and this is a movie that came, again, recommended to me by a friend, but I did not like this one. It's directed by Francois Simard, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce this, Anouk Wiesel, and Johan Carl Wiesel. I'm sorry if I butchered those names. Please don't hate me. But yeah, this movie, it follows a group of friends when they're on their summer vacation or their summer holidays, as we say here in Ireland. And they get up to some hijinks and they eventually get suspicions that their neighbor, their savory neighbor, the cop in the neighborhood, he might be a murderer. There's so many reasons. I felt hopeful going into this movie. I knew it was kind of cashing in on the whole, the 80s nostalgia, the Stranger Things kind of vibe. There are so many things here that I feel are just like ripped from Stranger Things. And not only Stranger Things, I think the actual entire plot of the movie I think it's just like a rehash of, I think the movie is Disturbia with, I know Shia LaBeouf was in a remake of it, ? Where it's like a dude stuck at home and he's looking at his neighbor with a pair of binoculars and he sees a bunch of weird shit going on. I feel like this movie wasn't very original. There are bits I liked, like the acting is fine, the cinematography is mostly okay. I had a few problems with that. But overall, it doesn't feel original, and for me, that makes it fall flat, and it's I've kind of already forgotten a lot of this. I also feel like this movie could have done some very creative things. Like, it set itself up to be very unique in certain ways. The one thing I'm thinking of right now is there's a scene later on in the movie where our main protagonist is being consoled by the girl of his dreams and being hailed as a hero, and he drops a line that says, "This doesn't feel real." And at that point I thought the movie was genuinely going to go, "Yeah, you're right, it wasn't real," and then we were going to get some seriously fucked up stuff for the last few minutes. But no, it plays out exactly like you'd expect. There's very few twists here. So I feel like I'm just rambling now, but yeah, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 just because it's perfectly middle of the road, nothing original. Watch it if you like 80s nostalgia, if that doesn't bother you. I didn't like it, so yeah. Okay, so I somehow skipped over this movie earlier, and I can't believe it because it's probably my favorite movie of the month. So, The Mortuary Collection is a movie I watched on Shudder this month, and it is it's impeccable. I love it so much. So, if I had to sell someone on this movie, I would tell them it's as if Christine McConnell. Granted, you probably have to know who Christine McConnell is. It's as if Christine McConnell, a lady with like very kind of fantastical vintage fashion, if she was allowed to direct a horror movie, I feel like this was literally ripped out of her brain and just put onto Shudder. Um, but it's fantastic. It's probably the best horror anthology that I think I've ever seen ever. I've tried watching, I think, VHS, and then there's Creepshow on Shudder, which I want to like. Maybe I really. A lot of people are singing Shudder's, or not Shudder. Sorry, I like Shudder. Creepshow. A lot of people are singing Creepshow's praises, and I don't understand why. And it's not just me. My friends agree with me as well. We feel like we're watching a different show than everyone else. I know the original movie is held in high regard, but I don't see the hype here. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just looking at it through the wrong lens, so to speak. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong down in the comments, I guess. It takes place in a morgue. A young lady shows up in response to a help wanted sign, I believe, and she sits down with the very creepy Undertaker played by Clancy Brown. He's very creepy in this role. His performance is absolutely fantastic. My phone is buzzing. His performance is absolutely fantastic. He's super creepy. He sits her down and kind of warns her that this place, there's more than meets the eye here. He then proceeds to tell her a series of kind of short stories, trying to creep her out. But as we soon find out, they ramp up in intensity, starting off kind of creepy and then getting gradually more grim and messed up as they go along. And everything about these short segments, from the way they're directed to the acting, the production design, everything is just fantastic. I love, love, love this movie. I gave it a 4. I'm probably going to bump that up to a 4.5, honestly. Um, please check it out. Honestly, if there's one movie I could recommend from everything I'm talking about today, The Mortuary Collection is the one I would recommend. So please, please, please check it out. So yeah, that's it for this month, I guess. If you have any thoughts on these movies, or if you disagree with anything I said, please let me know down below. If you like this movie, I would really appreciate it. If you like this movie, no, honey. No, if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe. It would really help me out. If you could like this video as well, I would really appreciate it. If you dislike this video, that's totally okay. If you want to dislike it, go ahead. I would not blame you. And yeah, if you would want to see more drag and discussions on horror in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. So I just noticed for the entire video, my bra strap is hanging down here. Just forget about that. We don't need to think about that. Just pretend I looked pristine for the entire video, okay? Thanks.